Okay, so we're starting with chapter 9. Last time we read, it ended with, "This was followed by much incomprehensible yelling as the bleeding human chased my humans out of its territory." Oh yeah, they were at the vet. And Klawde, when they tried to give him a shot, totally freaked out. Chapter 9, Sunday afternoon. My dad didn't play any 80s music on the ride home from Pet Bin. He looked sort of grim. I kept sneaking glances at Claude safely back in his cat carrier. When dogs do something bad, they look guilty. Not Claude. He was definitely purring now. Dad cleared his throat. "What happened at Pet Bin? You're not going to make me give him away, are you?" I said, "Because I don't have any friends here. And if I don't get to keep Claude, I'll be all alone and miserable." Oh yeah, they didn't go to the vet. They went to a shop clinic at Pet Bin, which is like our PetSmart. "Raj," he said, "you are going to make friends at Camp Eclipse." "Don't remind me," I said. But what I was going to say is that the vet took a gamble with Claude today, and he lost. You did warn him. "So I can keep Claude?" My dad nodded. "But you and he had better be careful. If that animal scratches your mother, it'll be the last thing he ever does," I said. "Exactly." I peered into Claude's cage. "Did you hear that, boy? You got to be nice." Claude looked me right in the eyes and blinked. He almost seemed to understand what I was saying, and then he hacked up a giant hairball. Chapter 10. Oh, the humiliations of exile. A hairball. I had to find an exuviating robot on this planet. Back at the fortress, the humans released me from the cage and opened the items they had stolen from the territory of the bleeding man. And then they placed them before me, like an offering. Did they realize I was their superior? Were they pledging their undying loyalty to me? This would be most excellent. I inspected their gifts. There was a small tower with rope wound around it. A sculpture, maybe? There were also several fluffy fake animals that they tried to coax me with into attacking and killing. Was this their idea of military training? These were disappointing offerings indeed. They next took out a box, poured some sort of sand into it, and attached a cover. They kept lifting me up and placing me inside. I had no idea what they wanted me to do in there. Dig? But why? Finally, there was the food, if you could even call it that. The only reason I knew they expected me to eat the pebble-like pellets was the way the big ogre kept pretending to put them in its mouth. Not that he was eating the pellets. No, the humans had something altogether different to dine on. Strange smells, delicious smells came from a pot that the long-furred human was stirring. I spit out the pellets and jumped near the flaming metal box to sample this food, but the long-furred human pushed me off. The gall! If only I had my molecular disintegrator, I would have vaporized it. Did this ogre have any idea what I did to the entire population of Pussycat? I again leaped to the firebox and again was shoved off. We shall see about this. Chapter 11. Monday morning. Mount Eclipse Welcome Cabin, 500 feet, the sign read. Even though we'd pulled into the parking lot, I was still desperately trying to get out of the whole nature camp thing. Mom refused to listen. "Look, Raj," she said as we walked away from the car, "this camp thing is a wonderful opportunity for you to understand the natural world, learn important survival skills, and beef up your college applications." But I'm going into 6th grade, I said, "and I thought the point of camp was to make friends." "Oh, yes, of course, friends." Mom pointed at a group of kids who looked 2 years older than me. How about them? She said. As Mom signed me into camp, I watched the kids stab at trees with pocket knives. I had no idea what they were doing, but they did not look friendly. When I turned back, my mom was already walking to our Prius. Have fun, she called and drove away. Fun. Yeah, right. Hi, what's Forrest's name? A girl had just materialized in front of me, like some kind of nature ninja. Her face was painted with mud. My what? The dried mud was cracking on her cheeks. It looked itchy. At Camp Eclipse, everyone has a Forrest name. Mine is Cedar, she said. Before I could say anything, I felt a big hand pressed down on my shoulder, and I turned to see a kid the size of a refrigerator looming over me. I'm Wolf, he said. That's a great Forrest name, Cedar said. That's my real name, the big guy said. My Forrest name is Steve. Cedar and I looked at each other. It seemed like a bad idea to correct him. What's your name? Steve asked me. I started to say my real name, but that was wrong. So I thought fast and finished at Rat? Did I just say my name was Rat? Did they even have rats in nature? Steve grinned. That's cool. We're going to learn so much in nature camp. You guys are going to love it. We're going to learn so much in nature camp. You guys are going to love it, Cedar cried. I can't wait until survival night. Just as I was about to ask what survival night meant exactly, the sound of strange hissing animal filled the air. Except it wasn't an animal. It was a tall, skinny guy with a big, bushy beard. He was standing on top of a large stump and flapping his long arms. Cedar told us this was the park ranger, who is also our camp counselor. His forest name is Turkey Vulture. Why is he hissing, I asked. Is there something wrong with him? No, it's the sound of a turkey vulture, duh. That's how he calls us to the speaking stump, Cedar said. Follow me. I looked at the counselor again. I didn't care what Cedar said. There was definitely something wrong with him. Chapter 12. With the humans gone, I had the fortress to myself. It was time to locate their intergalactic teleporter and return myself to my planet to have my revenge. Finding it proved difficult, however. For one thing, the humans put portals between their rooms for some reason. And like everything else on this barbaric planet, they were designed for opposable thumbs. Why didn't they just use universal touchscreens for everything like we did back home? I took a nap and considered what to do. 5 minutes later, I was hungry. The food situation had thus far been intolerable. Worse even than the petrified pellets was the foul-smelling canned sludge they seemed to think was a treat for me. Their food, placed inside an enormous box that was divided into 2 compartments. Using all my strength, I managed to pull one compartment open. The food inside was frozen solid, but why? The second compartment, however, held items that were merely cold. I licked everything. Much of what the humans considered food disgusted me. There was, however, a long yellow rectangle that was rather tasty and even more delicious than white liquid inside a carton. I also found 12 smooth brown ovals. I bit into one. It cracked open, and a yellow-orange glob suspended in a thick, clear goo oozed out. I ate it. It was disgusting. I went and vomited into one of the ogre's foot coverings. Chapter 13, Monday morning. The park ranger kept hissing and flapping until we had all gathered around the big stump he was standing on. Then he smiled at us. Was it just me, or did he have a lot of teeth? Welcome to Camp Eclipse, nature newbies. My name is Turkey Vulture, and I am your survival leader. Before we begin today's activities, let us put on our deer ears. I looked over at Cedar and the older kids who were all cupping their hands behind their ears. I did the same. And the sounds around me, birds, wind, insects, got louder. This is the sound of nature, Turkey Vulture said. It sounded pretty nice, actually, not nearly as spooky as I'd expected. Some fear that humans are destroying the planet, but Earth will be here long after we're gone. Nature is indestructible, Turkey Vulture went on. Humans, on the other hand, are not. He paused dramatically. However, if you learn to live with nature, there is hope for you. When you begin to understand nature's secrets, you may be able to survive the future that is coming. The day when you can no longer just buy whatever you want, such as soda, skateboards, pants, and here he looked straight at me, or American Man comic books in a store. I felt a chill go up my spine. It was like he could see right into my soul. Then he smiled with all those teeth again. The first step is to learn to navigate our way in nature. Turkey Vulture went on. Does anyone have an idea how we do this? It seemed like everyone except me was raising their hands, but Turkey Vulture called on me anyway. I gulped. Well, once my dad and I got off the highway at a rest stop that was really nature-y behind the parking lot. We went for a walk and got super lost, but we used Google Earth to find our way to an In-N-Out burger. Everyone just stared at me. And then we called a car, which took us back to the rest stop. The other kids began to snicker and looked to see what Turkey Vulture would say. The camp counselor narrowed his eyes at me. Do you have a phone on you now? He asked. I said yes. He shuddered in horror. Does anybody else have a technology? Steve raised his hand. Does an iPad count? One of the older kids who I'd heard called Scorpion said, what a bunch of losers these little kids are. After walking Steve and me to the cabin with the welcome sign on it, Turkey Vulture made us put our devices into what he called the forbidden basket. Then he led us all under the giant Camp Eclipse arch, which he said represented the gateway between civilization and nature. As I walked through, Turkey Vulture wrinkled his nose. The stench of civilization is strong on you, camper. It wasn't meant as a compliment, but I took it as one. Chapter 14. I took a nap and then resumed my search for a teleporter. There were large brown boxes scattered throughout the fortress, and I had discovered that this was where the humans kept their technology, if you could even call it that. It was all so primitive, and nothing even worked. Enraged, I batted at the thin tail of the nearest appliance. Almost all their technological objects had tails with 3 silver prongs at the tip. Were they for decoration? Everything does look better with a tail, after all. Then I noticed several holes in the wall that were the same size as the silver prongs on the tail. Perhaps this was a power source? I inserted prongs into the wall, and the object sent hot air blasting into my face. Hiss! I shut it off and began putting more prong tails into walls. The results were extremely disappointing. Most of the humans' apparatuses had to do with creating light or heat. After more searching, I found what I hoped was a photon gun, but the wire contraptions at the end of it did not fire 10 gigajoules of electricity. They just spun around. I could not imagine what this was for. You could barely maim even one enemy at a time with it. On the bright side, the brown boxes were satisfying in their own right, like our wonderful sleeping quarters back home. I got in one and I took a nap. Refreshed, I looked through more of the boxes, but it was hopeless. These ogres did not have multiphasic glob coils or photonic scramblers, let alone intergalactic teleporters. I would have to build one myself out of their junk. It could take weeks, and where would I even work? The only place I had any privacy was in the covered box filled with sand. Did you figure out what that was? It's a litter box. I brought their most promising piece of technology inside the box, and I began taking it apart. It had a timing mechanism and a spinning tray, and it created radiation. Useful. I think that might be the family's microwave. I had finally realized what they wanted me to do in that covered box, by the way. Pee and poop. The humans apparently wanted to collect feline excrement. Why? I had no idea, but I refused to supply them with it. Instead, I relieved myself where they did, in a room that contained a shiny white bowl, half filled with a small pool of liquid. With one press of a lever, the pee and the poop were flushed away, and voila! A fresh pool appeared. It was certainly their most interesting device. Where were those terrible humans anyway? They had been gone many nap times. Would they ever return? I feared the battle had gone poorly for them. And that's the end. When we return, chapter 15.